Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes renting fast if you're the car chick. Now, here she is.
Welcome, everyone, to the Straight Shift. I'm Leanne Shattuck, the Car Chick, and today we're going to be talking about winterizing your car. And I've got a fantastic guest, my good friend, Amy Mattinat, all the way up in Vermont. How are you, Amy?
I'm doing super.
Well, I want to brag on you for just a minute because I need to make sure that my listeners know how completely awesome you are. Amy's the owner of Auto Craftsman, which is this award-winning auto repair facility up in Vermont. You guys are ASE Blue Seal, which is like the ultimate, you know, like 5-star diamond, whatever award from ASE. You're AAA approved, and of course, you're Ask Patty certified female friendly, which is such a wonderful certification for a shop to do. But I mean, you're just really cool because what was it, 2015, you won the Small Business Administration's Vermont's Woman-Owned Business of the Year. And that's just not even repair shops, right? That's like all women-owned businesses?
It was all women in businesses, yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Nice
So you're
award.
The awesome of the awesomest there. And I know that you've also won the AAA Top Shop in Vermont Award and the Top Female Shop Owner of the Year. So you're just kicking butt up there in Vermont, girl.
Well, I'm loving what I'm doing, and I think that's the secret of success.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, and, you know, living up in Vermont, such a beautiful area of the country, you definitely know something about winterizing your car, something that we don't get exposed to as much down here in, you know, Charlotte, North Carolina. Our winter is like 3 days out of, you know, every 2 years, and it snows a half an inch, and we all freak out and stay home and just don't go anywhere. And then it's over, and it's 60 degrees again the next day. So
yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, we totally cheat. I know.
Yes.
You know, you can move down here. So tell us, you know, because I want to talk about, you know, what people who actually experience winter, what you guys need to do to winterize your cars. And, you know, a little bit, what are those things do we still need to do down here? Because it does get cold. Right now, we're kind of fluctuating. This morning, I woke up and it was 37 degrees. And then by like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it was 67 degrees. So
yes, and that's a big fluctuation for you.
it's huge. It's ridiculous. We call it schizophrenic weather.
Yes, that's where it's like you have to have all the layers.
Yeah, well, and you're turning your, you know, heat on at night and your air conditioning on in the day.
Yeah.
So talk about what do we think about when we need to winterize our cars?
So I think that even if you're down south, you can use the, you know, winterizing as a good place to really stop and look your car over. Now in Vermont, we really have to do that because our temperatures will go down to 20 below zero, which is
And that's before the wind chill.
Yes, and that's before the wind chill. And so the last thing you ever want to have happen during Vermont winter is for your car not to start, or even worse, not to stop, because we do get the slippery roads. But then, you know, it's kind of moving down the coast is a lot of people who haven't had to deal with it in the past, they'll get those little bits of snow where it's icy or slippery. And so in a sense, I do have some really good advice to keep you safe on the roads.
Well, and that's the problem we deal with down here is we don't actually get snow. We get ice.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's funny how many people down here in their SUVs, you're like, oh, I've got all-wheel drive, I'll be fine. You know, I hate to break it to you, but 4-wheels slide just as well on ice as 2.
They do. And that's where you get those really funny videos where you just see this road that has a very small pitch and all these cars trying to go up it. You know, first of all, you have the little car, then you have the SUV, and then you have the big truck, and they all slide down and run into each other. So when it's solid ice, really the only way you can travel on it is if you have chains on your tire.
Right. This is why we stay home.
Yes. And so that is the answer, is just stay home.
Well, I grew up in Cleveland and Milwaukee, so I learned to drive in Wisconsin in the snow,
Mhm.
and what they call drifting down here, we called getting to school in the morning up there. So,
Yeah.
I understand the sub-zero frigid temperatures and what that does to your car, and it's a big part of why I moved south. But I know that tires were kind of the most important thing that we dealt with. That I remember transitioning when it started, getting into those winter months.
So the whole thing with tires is that the tires are responsible for the car to move, to stop, and to steer. And that's its tire. And so in reality, I will say that tires are the most important part of your car. So
After the driver, yes.
yes, after the driver. So the brakes stop the wheel, but again, those tires are really, it's all about when the rubber hits the road and the traction. So for people who live up north, you're silly if you don't put on winter tires. It's
Yeah,
good.
see, down here we get away with, all season tires that can handle the temperature fluctuations like we're having right now, but it rarely gets so cold, and we don't have the need for that level of traction for driving through the snow.
Even if you're down south and you're running all season tires, this is still a good time to stop and check out how much tread do I have on my tire. Because if your tires are starting to get low, as far as the tread goes, then it's a great time to put on new tires so that you have that grip. Because as you wear out the rubber on the road, you aren't going to have as much grip. It takes a longer amount of time to stop the car, and if there's anything on the road, you don't have as much tread to stick for when it's steering. So,
I remember you and I experienced that because, we met through Michelin where we got to go, they flew us to New Orleans and they took us down to their top secret test facility in Lawrence, South Carolina. And we got to empirically test this. And I've always known the importance of tires. As a race car driver, tires are everything to us. But I don't think I really appreciated the stopping power of a tire, a new tire versus a worn tire until we did that test. And, it was the difference between stopping in within 10 to 12 feet versus stopping within 20 to 25
yes, and
feet.
that was such a rude awakening because the first time when
Wasn't
it
it?
when I stopped, I was like, okay, I got it. And then the second time when you have a tire that's a little more worn out, it took longer, and you're like, wow, I probably would have hit it. And then when you have the tire that's really worn out, it's like, I'm dead
I'm
because
done.
it took so much longer to stop. So important. I always like to, when I do car care clinics, I take a piece of paper, and you just like take a piece of paper, fold it in half, and then fold it in half. So you fold it in half lengthwise, and then you fold it in half widthwise. And that piece of paper represents the contact patch of one of your tires. And so it's a really good visual to see. It's a really small patch of tire, four little patches that your car is touching the road, and that's all you got are those four patches of contact to be able to move, stop, and steer. So really important that you either have good tread, or you have, if you're up in the north, you have to have winter tires so that they can handle getting the snow out of the tread, and getting, when it's really cold, they don't get too stiff and they can't grip the road.
I experienced that. I was racing at VIR, the racetrack in Virginia, in November a couple of years ago, and I wasn't thinking about how cold it was that day, and I just brought my normal racing tires, and they are high performance tires. They're designed for hot temperatures. And let me tell you, those tires that just grip the racetrack like crazy during the summer, at the end of November, it was like trying to race on those plastic Tonka tires. I had no grip whatsoever. I have never been more miserable on the racetrack than that
Yeah.
day. But I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I need a different tire.
Remember when we were in South Carolina, Michelin flew us down there, and they were going to give us, as a big thank you for coming to test their tires, they had a souped up, I think it was a Mustang, or I don't know, some kind of souped up car with a race car driver, and they were going to give us hot laps around the track. And
Right.
it was a cold day, so they actually had heaters blowing on the tires to heat them up before we started driving, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, I remember that. And mostly what I remember is being able to take the minivan around their racetrack, and I laid down a lap time that was 6 seconds faster in the minivan than I did in the BMW just because there were good tires on it. Well, I know that, I remember, growing up in Wisconsin, the biggest thing was when you came out in the morning, and we used to put wool blankets over the hood and do everything we could to keep the car warm, mostly because we put the dogs in the heated garage and the cars got to stay in the driveway. But, it was like, okay, will the car start? It was just, will the battery, start you up in this, sometimes minus, 30 below in Wisconsin.
Yeah, the whole thing with the battery is that the colder it is, the less power it has. So if you have a fully charged battery, and or like a brand new battery, when it goes down to zero, that battery only has 40% of its power. And if it goes down to like even, say it's wind chill 32 below zero, it only has 25% of its available power. So the colder it gets,
I feel the same way.
I do too. I mean, it makes sense because it's so cold. And so when you have your battery tested, so you go to the shop and you say, I've had this battery 3 to 5 years is, approximately what a battery will last for, depending on how you drive and how, stop and go, how much the batteries have to work. So say your battery's 4 years old and you're going on a trip and you want to know, does my battery have enough juice in it to keep driving it? Is you want to ask them to do a load test. You don't want just one where they take a snapshot of your battery has this much power. You want them to do a load test, which is what they do is they kind of like turn everything on. So when you get in your car, you're going to turn your car on. You're going to turn the defrost on. You got the music blowing. You got your phone plugged in. I mean, you got everything going, and that's
the heated seats are on.
Exactly. I mean, I do that as soon as I get in my car. I hit those heated seats. So you want them to do a load test so that you find out what the battery really has when it's being used.
Because we forget that the battery of the car powers all of those other things that we do, which is why, I laughed when they tested like some of the electric cars, like the Nissan Leaf, and they advertise that it's got a range of 150 miles, but that's, you're not using the radio, you're not using the navigation, the fan's not blowing, that 150-mile range can drop down to like 30 miles when you're running all the accessories in the car.
Very quickly.
It's just not going to want to work as hard when it's that dang cold out.
No. And then there's the whole myth of how long to let your car warm up before you drive it. And so...
Yeah, so how do you know that?
So you don't really have to let it warm up very long. But it's cold. So I will admit, when I get up in the morning and it's 10 below zero, I bundle up, I run out, I turn on the car, get the defroster going, and I run back in the house and have a cup of tea. Now, I don't really need to do that. You could technically, if you're in a hurry, turn the car on, turn the defroster on, and then go out and start scraping the windows and getting all the snow off. And by the time you've come around to the front, and you get the windshield wipers so they aren't stuck to the front, because you do not want to be pulling those wipers or scraping those wipers because it's really a very small piece of rubber and it's easy to damage them, and then you have to get new wipers. So by the time you get your car all defrosted and cleaned off, then you're good to drive. But I still I don't want to be shivering in my car when I'm driving down the road. So I let it warm up a little bit. And then I go in and that way, the defroster's been really defrosting and I can just push everything off and I'm good to go.
That's why the whole remote start thing in the newer cars is so popular. And they even have apps now where you can start your car from your smartphone so that when you get out there, it's all nice and toasty warm for you because, it's about warming up ourselves and the cabin as much as it is the engine of the car.
The car doesn't care as much. Now, you don't want to get out of the driveway and jump on the highway and start driving 65 when the oil is thick. Think of how olive oil thickens when you put it in the refrigerator and you take it out and then it thins out. It's kind of the same thing. It doesn't get that thick in the engine, but it is thicker. But when you turn it on, it's going to thin out pretty quickly. But it still does not want to start driving 65 miles an hour. But, if you live in a neighborhood and you got a couple, just like take it easy until you see the thermostat start to move up a little bit. And then once it shows you that the engine has warmed up, then you're just good to take off and go.
Sounds good. Well, we're going to take just a super quick 60-second break. And when we come back, we'll continue talking with Amy about winterizing your car. I'm going to talk about coolant, hoses, and critters. We'll be right back. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of or about finding the right car at a fair price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 888-575-2138. That's 888-575-2138. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Nice to meet you. Love your asphalt. Hey, nice treads.
It's Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
We are back with more Straight Shift, and we're talking with my good friend Amy Mattinat, who is the owner of Auto Craftsman, a fantastic auto shop all the way up in beautiful Vermont. And we're talking about winterizing your car. And we've talked about the importance of tires and getting your battery tested because things just don't work as well when it's really dang cold. But I also know that, you kind of, there's this whole coolant thing. And, in the South, we think of coolant as actually, cooling, but that's not really its only purpose. I know that, when you go up north or you live up north, there needs to be some different chemical compositions to that so that the coolant doesn't freeze overnight and damage your engine. So tell us a little bit more about that, because that's just not something we deal with in the South. But anybody who's planning to make a road trip up north during the winter, maybe for the holidays, they may need to change out the coolant that's currently in their car, because what's going to work in Charlotte will not work in like Michigan or New York.
That's really good advice. The coolant, what we do is we mix it 50% coolant, 50% water. And it is really important because say you were coming up north for the holidays or coming up for a ski trip or, coming up north, then you do want to get the coolant changed out, because if it was too much water and not enough coolant, which would be fine down south,
Oh,
your
yeah.
radiator could freeze. And when the radiator
That's
freezes,
not good.
it's going to expand and then it's going to pop and then
We call that a spontaneous high-speed disassembly.
Yes, exactly. You are not going anywhere. Then you're stuck up here. So yeah,
Because some
very
people
important.
get confused because we use the term coolant, but then they also hear the term antifreeze, but we're really talking about the same thing.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So
And
we call it antifreeze in the north and we call it coolant in the south.
yes. Yeah. So very important to check the coolant. Simple things though, make sure you got good windshield wipers, make sure that your air filters are clean, and you got two air filters. You got the engine air filter so your engine could breathe, and then I call it a people air filter, which other people call a cabin air filter, and that's for you to breathe. And if it gets clogged up, you're not going to get as much heat, defrost coming through, and then you're also going to be breathing really horrible stuff. And that's where we can talk then about critters. Is critters love air filters, and they like to either make nests in them or actually use part of the air filter to make a nest. So you do want to have them checked on a regular basis, because you don't want to be breathing in little presents from the mice. And you want to make sure that they're nice and clean so that you're also breathing good air.
That's so funny because, critters is just not something that we even remotely think about down here. We think about critters when it's time to get the boats out in the summer and everybody's putting their boat in the water and, it's either been in storage for the winter or it's been, up kind of stored out of the water, on their dock, we have two beautiful lakes here in Charlotte and people have boats, and we worry about the mice kind of getting in there and chewing up your electrical lines and leaving you
Yeah.
little presents in your upholstery and stuff. But we don't think about critters getting into our cars. I'm a city girl. I know you live out in the boondocks there in Vermont. I'm a city girl, and I'm like, critters? What are you talking about?
Mhm. Oh, they make a mess. And they do. They like to bite the wires and they can do a lot of damage.
One thing, that people even here in the South would need to think about too is a lot of the times, cats, for example, or even raccoons or possums, if you park your car in the driveway in the winter, that car is nice and toasty warm. And those critters that are, living outside and don't have a nice warm home to come home to, like my two spoiled brats, they'll crawl up into your engine compartment just to stay warm through the night. So, if you park your car in the driveway and not your garage, when you look under the hood, look up in the tire wells and stuff, if you have animals in your neighborhood, just to make sure that you don't have a stowaway before you start your car.
Yeah, yeah, because that could be nasty. So other things that we think about is having a kind of like a survival kit in the back of the car, which, even if you're down south is still a good idea to have. I mean, maybe you have
Absolutely.
different things. I mean, everybody should have jumper cables in the car. And up here in the north, we like to have either kitty litter or a bag of salt or a bag of sand,
I
something.
remember that. We always carried a giant bag of kitty litter around in the
Mhm.
car, and it served two purposes. One, it held the back end of the car down. Because, when I grew up, I learned to drive in Wisconsin in an 85 Toyota Celica Supra, which was this great little rear wheel drive sports car that had a lot of low end power, but absolutely no weight in the back over the tires. So the 50-pound bag of kitty litter held the back end of my car down. But then if I
Yeah.
got stuck on the ice, you would take some handfuls of it and put it under your tires because it was so much better than using salt, which could damage your car. And sand is just like putting down another layer of ice. That's
Mhm.
completely useless.
Mhm. So that's always
I'm
a
glad
good
to see
thing
you
to
guys still
have.
do that.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Fond
So
memories.
we like to have extra windshield washer fluid and some paper towels in the car, have a flashlight. Flares are always good for everybody to have in the car. First
Absolutely.
aid kit, blankets, extra warm clothes. So that if, something happened, you slid off the road, then what do? You got to wait for the tow truck to come. And if it's really cold out and you can't be turning your car on because of, what happened, you got to have layers, put on more layers so that you're not going to freeze out there.
Even here in Charlotte, we kind of think about we take a lot of that roadside stuff for granted in the city because we're just so close to everything. And I know, you live out in the boondocks a little bit where it could take them longer to get to you. But
Mhm.
even during the holiday season, especially, and even the winter months, if you call AAA or whoever your roadside assistance company is, they may tell you we're slammed. It's probably going to be 2 hours before we can get to you.
Right.
And in that 2 hours, if it is 30 degrees, you and your family can get very cold and it can get very dangerous. And you don't want to leave your car in an emergency situation because, walking on the highway or walking down the road, unless you're able to kind of coast off the highway and get into a parking lot where you can walk a block to the nearest Starbucks and wait for AAA, it's good to have that stuff in your car, even if you're in the South, because you could end up waiting for a couple of hours for that rescue team to arrive.
Yeah, yeah. So in the wintertime, I always say that you should keep your car at least have the tank half filled up. So the half becomes your new empty. Because that way, number one, the gas lines aren't going to freeze because, you had water condensation if you let it go all the way to empty. But then if anything happens, you can still, say you can turn your car on. You don't want to sit there with the car running, nonstop. The thing to do is to turn it on for about 10 minutes with the window open a little bit so that you're not like sealed in there shut.
Yeah,
And
no carbon monoxide poisoning.
yes, but turn it on for 10 minutes, heat it up, and then turn it off. That way you're not going to run out of gas and you have, the heat is on for a while so you're not sitting there freezing. You kind of go from cold to hot, warm it back up, and then it'll slowly get cold again.
That's where those layers you were talking about for layers of
Exactly, you're
clothing come
wrapped up
in.
in your blanket, and you got your hat on, and you got your boots, and it's good to have some munchies in the car, but talking about the critters is you wanna make sure they're in a, mouse-proof container, so a tin or, something where the mice can't get in there, or really then
Rubbermaid.
you're just saying, "Hey, come on down, I got some, stuff here in the back for you."
We got a buffet for you right here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not something that I would think about. I normally keep what I call emergency rations in my purse anyway, just because I'm always running around and never have time to eat. And so I keep protein bars. But, keeping that stuff in a sealed container is definitely smart. And it'll also keep it fresh. So you can, keep the same granola bars in your car for 2 years if you need
Right,
to.
because they really do last that long. You gotta kinda wonder.
Twinkies, you're good for like 20 years, but
Yes.
granola bars, kind of a 2-year mark.
Yes. And I think no matter where you're at, it's always good to have a good ice scraper. If you don't live in a snow belt, and you're not gonna get the snow, you still could get the ice. So it's
We
nice to
do.
have, and there's this one brand, it's called Fantastic Ice Scraper, and it's just a little ice scraper, but it has a brass piece on it, so it
Oh,
just gets that ice right off. It's my favorite ice scraper. We always
and
have some
without hurting the windshield.
without hurting the windshield. Yep, does
That's
not
awesome.
scratch
Yeah.
the glass.
Don't use your credit card. Don't do that stupid YouTube video thing where you pour hot water
Oh,
onto
no,
your
definitely
windshield.
don't do that.
That's a great way to crack your whole, windshield
Yeah,
and bring a abrupt end to your day. So,
yeah.
we've talked about all these things to do to winterize your car. Do you have to summarize your car, or maybe we should call it de-winterizing your car when it's all done and we're transitioning back to spring?
Well, our big thing for summarizing your car would, number one, get the winter tires off and put your summer tires back on, because if you run your winter tires when it's hot out, you're going to wear them out really quick. Because we get so much salt and snow on the roads, they put a lot of salt on the roads. I don't think that didn't make any sense whatsoever.
They salt the roads to melt the ice, and that salt sticks to your car and rusts the heck out of it.
Correct, but it
This is why I
also
do not buy northern cars.
yes, yes,
Ever.
exactly. We go down south to bring cars up north, that's for sure.
That's why our used cars are more expensive than your
Yes.
used cars, because you guys are coming down and stealing them from us
Yeah.
and driving the prices up.
Yeah. But you'll get the salt on your shoes, and then you get into the car, and there'll be like a buildup, this crusty salt all over the floor mats and on the rugs. So in the
We do
summertime,
that with sand coming back from the beach every year.
yes. So summarizing is getting rid of all that, sand and salt and crud that's built up over the winter. And then
So it's like a really good detailing of your car
yeah,
inside and
because
out.
when it's cold out, you're not going to clean your car like you do in the summer. And so
No.
probably behind most seats in the north, there's, all kind of potato chip bags and, all those extra things that kind of accumulate, because you're not going to, in the summertime, I mean, I love to clean my car in the summer, give it a good bath, but in the wintertime, no, not so much.
No, not so much. And you guys probably don't even have your automatic car washes up there. Do they even run in the winter?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, because you
Okay.
get so much salt on the outside that you've got
True.
it as soon as it warms up a little bit, everybody gets their car washed so you don't brush up against the salt. But see, other summarizing, it would be probably time to put on new wipers, because most people, destroy their wipers in the winter because they don't let the windshields defrost. And then check it all over. Make sure it's safe. Check the belts, the hoses, the coolant, the AC. I mean, I know you guys can't live without it,
Oh,
but
that's our big thing.
that's your big thing. But we do that also because we have maybe 2 weeks every year where people can't live without their AC. So it's good to, we check that out when we summarize our cars.
Yeah, and you mentioned the hoses and the belts and everything. Rubber components; those are all made of rubber and or plastic nowadays. Some of those hoses are plastic, and don't get me started on that. But the rubber, it gets really cold and brittle and frigid, just like
Mhm.
your tires can get a little bit brittle in the winter. Those rubber parts inside the engine, they can get brittle, and so they're going to wear out faster on a car that lives in the winter, 4 6 months out of the year than they do down here. But just anytime it gets cold, that's the time when you can really see those babies crack, and it's good to kind of check them out before and after the winter to see how they survived and replace them as needed.
Yes. Another thing I think a lot of people don't know about or they don't think about is their headlights. Now, number one, you want to make sure that all your lights are working. But in this day and age, the headlight covers are made out of plastic. Years ago, they were made out of glass, but now they're made
Right.
out of plastic. And the snow and the salt and the sun will discolor that plastic and just put this, it turns it almost yellow and it gets all cloudy.
Aside from looking like crap, your headlights do not shine as brightly, and so they're not as effective. We do that down here too with headlight restoration. I'm sure it happens faster for you guys up there.
Well, I don't know if it does or not, but I think that it's a really good thing to look into because at nighttime it's really important to have as best of view as far out as you can go that your lights will work for. And if your headlights get cloudy, you just can't see as well.
You can't see as well, and they can't see you. Safety is so much about seeing and being seen.
Yes, exactly.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing this wisdom. And, you've kind of reminded me of all these things that I grew up with, growing up north that I'd completely forgotten about living here in the South. So, had some nostalgic moments there. And I always appreciate you sharing your wisdom. If people, in your area are listening to this podcast and want to get a hold of you, how can they find you, Amy?
Best way to find us is online, our website, autocraftsmen.com, and they can always give us a call, 802-223-2253.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Amy. And I will definitely have you on as a guest again. And it's been great. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
My pleasure, Leanne.
Drive safely, folks.
Straight Shift Podcast is copyright Leanne Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of Leanne Shattuck or The Car Chick.